name is Beck and welcome to a video where I decided to check in with what I've made in the past. So in the past I made a series I'm in the middle of video and I wanted to check in and see if I've actually DNF'd these series, if I've continued them and made progress, or if they've just fallen off my radar. We're gonna do this together so you can see all of my shame and or success, so let's get started. Hello, my name is Beck and welcome to a video where I talk about the book series that I am currently in the middle of, because there are a few of them. I'm usually fairly good at completing series. Maybe I should do a video about all the series I've finished, but there's a whole different can of worms. We're going to talk about the series that I have read pieces of, and these are generally series that have either been completed or they've got a lot of books in them still, because if it's a series that is currently being written, then that obviously doesn't count because nobody can finish the series because it hasn't even been finished by the author. So anyway, I think I have done enough rambling for the beginning of this video. So the first book that I want to talk about is The Witcher by Andrzej Sapkowski, and I have read the first two books in this series and I plan on reading on to Blood of Elves. Yep, straight away, straight into my shame. I have not read the continuation of Blood of Elves. However, I do own it because I got it as a gift from a friend and I hauled it in a recent haul. So it is something that I do plan on getting to hopefully this year, because it's a book that I didn't want to fall off my radar, and thankfully with my friend gifting it to me, it hasn't fallen off my radar, but it's kind of just been ignored by me because I'm feeling guilty about not starting it yet, and so therefore I haven't. So I really need to. Okay, I really need to. So that's a bit embarrassing. First cab off the rank and I've already not read something. The next series is actually on the shelf behind me and it's up here, and it's The Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. I almost said The Dresden Files by Harry Dresden. Yes, this is a series that I'm not up to date on yet. However, I have been reading it and I'm 13 books into the series. I have a whole playlist for Dresden. I'm reviewing it as I go and I'm loving the experience. I'm reading it with my partner and we are adoring it. So that is a series that I have not added to my pile of shame and I have actively been continuing, and I love the audiobooks. It is perfection. So if you haven't got onto it and you want something exciting, do it. The next series is one that I wanted to start, but I knew that because it was quite long and it was a commitment that I only wanted to at least start the first book this year. And that book is The Wheel of Time. Well, it's Eye of the World, that's the first book, but Wheel of Time is the series. So I did read the first book and I have been reading the second book, but the catch is I've been reading the second book for like 5 months. So I'm really not making as much progress in this as I wanted. However, I have made some progress. So I don't want to throw all of my achievements out the window, but also I said that I wanted to read 5 more books in the series and it's already almost halfway through 2021 and I haven't even read the second book. So I think I just need to renege on that goal a little bit and say, let me get to the end of the second book and then just see where I go. Because I do want to continue it at this point, even though the second book is kind of mediocre for me. It has a few things and a few tropes mixing around that I don't love. I do want to finish it. And it still is kind of on my almost pile of shame because I have started it and I'm more than halfway through. I have started The Great Hunt. I've finished Eye of the World. I am reading The Wheel of Time. I think I've done all right. The next book was also on the shelf behind me and it's Book of the Unnamed Midwife, and I read this in like January or February this year, and this is a apocalyptic dystopian book where our main character is a midwife, and obviously that seems fairly obvious because it's got midwife in the title. This is such a great book. I adored it. But then I read the others in the series and I didn't love them as much. So this is a success story in one part because yes, I have continued, but it's not a success in the fact that it didn't get better with each book, it got worse with each book. So this is an apocalyptic book, like I said, and it has a bisexual protagonist. It does have a pandemic in it, and we follow her because she is one of the few survivors of this pandemic. It wiped out more than 99% of the population, and men survived on a higher rate than women. So women in this world are very much hunted down, and she has like gender dysphoria from pretending to be a man for so long, from being on her own so long, and I love the people and communities that she comes across. A lot of the time in this book and in this series, there was potential to develop people in a negative way just based on assumption, and I like that it deviated from that. It is a very queer, positive book series. However, overall, with the second 2 books, they were very internal character focused, and I like a good balance between character and plot. And the last 2 books in the trilogy didn't really balance it, but the first one, The Book of the Unnamed Midwife, really did. I'm happy that I read it. Aside from the first book, I didn't love the rest, and so I didn't end up buying them because I listened to them on audiobook, but I did purchase the first one. So I think that's a bit of a success, and it's at least not on my pile of shame. The next series on here is actually a manga, and that's Fruits Basket, and this is a romantic supernatural comedy book where our main character Toru, she is living in a tent trying to survive on her own after her mother's recent passing away, and she stumbles into the family estate of the Soma family, and they kind of take her under their wing because she won't help herself first, she'll help other people first. And so they're like, come in, help maintain our estate, and then you can live here and you don't have to live in a tent anymore. Yes, this is a series that is like 24 volumes long, so it's 12 in the bind-ups. I bought all of them, I read all of them. The ending was a little bit it wasn't what I remembered. There were parts of it that I adored though, and the characters that I loved had such a really good wrap up to them. So it was rewarding in that sense, and I'm very happy that I finished it. And there is an anime that I need to watch and I just haven't bothered yet. But I did like the series, and I'm glad that again I have finished it. And I do own all of these physically, and there is beautiful art in them. So I definitely lucked out there. Also, I want to talk about Oren High School Host Club, which is another manga that I am currently reading. I say currently reading, but I feel like I haven't picked it up in a very long time, but I started reading it in high school, and that rings true for now. It has been one that I'm currently reading, but I've had it on my currently reading pile for a very long time, for years. I've had it on my reading pile for years, and I just stopped reading the series after just past the midpoint, not because it was bad, just because I got distracted. So I need to go back and finish it because I don't know the ending, and I'm very annoyed at myself that I just stopped because I've only got like 5 volumes left, if that. So I really need to go back and do that. Maybe I'll do that to bolster my reading goal this year. Who knows? But I do need to go back to reading it. It's also just really light and fluffy and fast, and I feel like that would be really good to put in between other larger books because I tend to read a lot of long books. So if I can finish something that's short and snappy, maybe I should just do that. Next, I want to talk about some comic book series that I'm reading because I tend to stop and start on reading comic book series because each volume, like each volume of manga, can get quite expensive. So depending on what I rated the most recent volume and depending on my income at the time, I will either go out and buy the next one or I won't. And so I'm reading Paper Girls, I'm reading Chew, and I'm reading The Walking Dead at the moment, but all of them are very different and all of them are varying in length as well. Funny thing about this series, I just did a video where I said these are the books I've DNF'd in these series, and The Walking Dead was on that list because I don't like the change in art style after the volume 1. It changes to a different artist and I felt confused with that artist. And then Paper Girls I've just stopped because I just forgot to buy more volumes, and then I was out of a job during COVID and stuff, so that has just taken a bit of a back seat. Same thing with Chew. I did reread one of the volumes or a couple of the volumes recently because I wanted to get back into it and I wanted to refresh on my memory of the story so I could actually continue, and then I just never finished rereading them and never continued. So I want to say that I've DNF'd both of these series, at least for the moment, because ongoing I might end up picking them up again. I might revisit them. There might be a readathon or something that the volumes in the series match up with, and that will spur me to continue and pick them up again. But at the moment I'm not really vibing with it because they're just not something that I want to rehash, and they're not something that I want to go out and purchase right this second. So for the moment those are off my TBR because I've just decided to park them. So as far as this video is concerned, I'm not reading these series anymore. Oh, I also forgot a comic, and it's called Revival. It's another zombie comic, and I've only read the first volume, but I gave it like 4 stars or something. I really liked it, and I think it involves zombies in a different way to what The Walking Dead does. I think it did do a fun twist on zombies. However, I don't really remember it very well, and I never continued reading it. So I think this is in the same boat as the other 3 comics that I just mentioned in the fact that I've parked it and I'm not continuing it yet. So I've technically DNF'd all of them because I've lapsed for so long on getting the rest of the volumes. I don't actually know how long Revival is. I should probably look that up to see what I'm actually in for, because I know The Walking Dead is very long, whereas Paper Girls is like 6 or 7 volumes long, and I think Chew is like 20. So Chew and The Walking Dead are quite long, but Revival and Paper Girls aren't. So I don't know how I'm going to go about finishing these series if I ever decide to pick them back up again, but I think that's a problem for future me. Next up is an urban fantasy series, the Mercy Thompson series by Patricia Briggs, and I've read the first 2 books in this series, and I kind of stopped reading because I think I don't like reading vampires as much in urban fantasy because it messes with consent, and the bloodlust thing just overclouds people's minds, and it's like taking advantage of them when they're drunk or high or something. It just doesn't sit right with me, but I know that a lot of people enjoy the whole vampire thing. Yeah, that's pretty much it summed up in a nutshell. I didn't really love the vampire take. I didn't really love the domineering love interest take. So this series just wasn't my cup of tea, and I've ended up deciding not to continue it as well. So check out my series I've DNF'd video because I've covered a few of those off in that video. So I'm not buying the rest of the books. I'm not reading further into the series. I think I might end up unhauling the second book audiobook, but the first book is signed to me, so we'll see if I get rid of that one or not. But as far as Mercy Thompson is concerned, I'm not continuing that series either, so that's another success for this, and it's not on the pile of shame. The next one is The Shadow of the Fox, and this is a series by Julie Kagawa. It is a book that just reminded me of watching an anime, and I loved it. Yes, it did remind me of watching an anime, however, I've forgotten to continue it, so I just said there was no more for my pile of shame, but this one turns out it is on the pile of shame. So I read and loved Shadow of the Fox. It follows a couple of different characters all on this quest together. They're like a ragtag crew that have just come together through circumstance. So it has that dynamic of there's someone funny and cutesy and prankster, like someone who is a little bit too old to be in the game still, but brings their perspective anyway. And then there's this dark and brooding character, which is not like this toxic kind of vibe that's very manipulative and negative. It's more someone who is just having a lot of inner struggle, and it manifests in them being brooding, but they still communicate, which I liked. So I need to continue these. I think I listened to them on audiobook, or the first one on audiobook, and then I just never continued because I don't own them, so they just fell off my awareness, I guess. And that is not on. I think this is going to be on a bunch of videos coming up because it's one that I don't want to forget. So I'm sorry if I talk about it more than once, but I really don't want to forget it. Next is actually a series that I have finished reading. However, the Lunar Chronicles is a quartet. It does have a bunch of books after the quartet, but I don't really plan on reading them now. I liked the Lunar Chronicles. They were a lot of fun. They were a sci-fi twist on modern fairy tales, but I don't feel the need to go back and revisit them. So I don't really care about continuing in the graphic novels or whatever. If they appear and my friend lends them to me or something and they're like, this is fun, and I don't have too much pressing me at the time to read, I'll probably read them. But at the same time, I'm not too fussed, so I'm not actively going to go and seek them out. It's just if they happen to fall in my lap, or if I happen to spontaneously buy them in a bookstore, which I don't think is going to happen. So Lunar Chronicles, you were fun, but not one that I want to avidly continue reading. So I think this is on my parked list as well. Next is Cherub by Robert Muchamore. This is a middle grade spy series, and it has like a magical school but for a spy academy. So these kids are usually orphaned and they're taken by kind of like a faction of MI6 but not MI6, and they are trained as Cherub agents because nobody suspects kids when they're going to, you know, run their own drug ring or whatever. I did read the first 2 books in this series, and that is because I owned them, but I haven't gone out and bought the rest. But what I did read I enjoyed, and they lived up to my memory of reading them, which doesn't often happen. So I do want to continue these eventually, but again, they're not something that's pressing. So I don't think they're a series that I'm necessarily currently in the middle of, because I've just stopped and then I'll continue when I eventually get to them. I've read them before, so it's not like it's a massive mystery. So eventually I'll get back to them, but it's not a pressing matter or anything. These were like staples of my high school reads because I read these and I read Percy Jackson, 2 middle grade kind of adventure stories or series, and I loved them. So I do want to continue reading them, but just not right now. Okay, I only have 3 left. So the next one is the Broken Empire trilogy, and that is by Mark Lawrence. I have that right here with me. I did a spoiler vlog for this book, and I do intend on reading the others because my partner really loves them, and so I want to talk about them with him, but I also just ignored them. Let's be real. I just ignored them because I didn't want to prioritize them, especially because they're a bit darker, and I didn't really feel like reading something too dark lately, but my reading taste might change with my mood. So I could feel like picking these up. I know I have to read them physically because I tried the audiobook and I just missed a lot of detail. So I don't want to do that again going into the sequels because I had to reread this to get all the information. So to refresh, I might watch my spoiler vlog and then go and read the others, because that seems like the best kind of port of call or point of action in order to refresh myself, because it's been over a year now since I read this first book, and that is not a recent enough refresher. So I do want to read the rest because it's only a trilogy. It shouldn't be too difficult, although the others are a little bit longer than this, but I'm sure I'll manage. The next one is a graphic novel, and it is by Brandon Sanderson. And if you're watching this video and you know that I'm a Brandon Sanderson fan, you're like, Beck, how could you not like Brandon Sanderson? But I actually really liked this story in the past because he wrote it in his Arcanum Unbounded collection, and it is a short story called White Sand. Ah, yes, White Sand. I discussed this in my 5 series that shouldn't have been series video, which probably gives you an indication of my feelings about it, because I liked the novelization, I didn't like the graphic novel. So as far as this series is concerned as well, I think it's a graphic novel trilogy. Each novel is hardcover as well, and so in Australia in dollars it's very expensive. So that combined with the fact that I know that I'm not going to give it a massive rating, I've just decided not to continue it right now. Maybe in the future, but it's really expensive and that's likely to turn me off reading it. So maybe if it comes out in a bind up or something, or if it comes out as a paperback rather than a hardcover, I don't know. But I gave it a 3 and I didn't love it. I wasn't obsessed with it, and usually Sanderson is one of my favorite authors, so I thought that I would love this as well. I loved the novelization form, didn't love this form, so it's not on my series that I'm pressingly going to continue. I don't plan on sitting down and making a book order and going, I need to include White Sand. I'm not really hungry for it, so I can afford to leave it. I can literally afford to leave it for now because it's very expensive. And then last on this list, but probably not last in my life because I have no doubt forgotten something, is The Archive by V.E. Schwab or Victoria Schwab. This is a book series that didn't end up getting finished because of some publisher stuff that went down with V.E. Schwab when she first published it, because she was quite young when she did so. And so I haven't put money into getting the next book because I didn't want to give money to that publishing company, so I might try and buy it secondhand or maybe get it from my library or something. My point is, I do want to continue reading it. In the past, I did want to read this. Now, not so much. I've read the first book, so probably around last year, around this time, I think I read The Archived. I do remember reading it and I remember enjoying it, but I know that I don't want to continue it because, again, I don't have the fire in me to do so. Combined with the publisher stuff that I mentioned, I'm just not really that interested. However, I do like her other work. I'm looking forward to her new releases, and I really enjoyed The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm still keeping tabs on the author and her work, but in terms of The Archived itself, I'm not really keen on continuing that one just because I can't be bothered really. So I guess that concludes this video on kind of like a mediocre note, which I guess kind of suits the vibe because I felt very mediocre about the books that I've featured in this video. So if you have any books that you feel mediocre about, I guess let me know. But thank you so much for watching this video. I'll come chat to you down in the comments and I'll see you on my next one. Bye.